if you can imagine what all the Tradescantia through there, it was through all in here and worse just a couple of years ago. It's amazing the difference. And one of the things, the Andean Bolivian coconut palm, it has blossomed. It has really grown away since the Tradescantia has been removed. It hasn't fruited yet, but it's in its native range. It is regarded as an endangered species. So this is one of the things that we think of for the park. Although it is exotic, we actually may be helping to maintain the gene pool of some other parts. And as an aside, for the Owairaka Mount Albert area with the trees there, there's a lot of eucalypts there, and some of the species of eucalypts, I've been told, are those which are endangered in Australia. The other ones are going to be removed. Yeah, we don't think of how we actually may be contributing to other parts of the world sometimes when we just focus on the native and what's here. Yeah. In the urban areas, it'd be almost impossible to get back to the native situation because the underneath is just not the beetles, the moths and all the natives that grew up with things just won't survive here, even or take a long time before you get a resemblance, and you get something like it, but you'll never get the same as what it was before. As it is, things are always changing anyway, so what point in time do you actually pick to where you want it to be? Yeah. So when you look at an area like this, what we try to say, there's about 400 species of plants in this 6,500 square metre area, different types, and there's both. And why we regard this as basically urban biodiversity. We're not looking at just native biodiversity, but urban biodiversity. That's Domia, still in flower. There's one by the composting, pink flower. Pink cloud is the variety. And that's really good for bees and things for all times of the year. So we'll just go through to the end there and we'll go past to the archaeological site. Here, macadamia, the mountain pawpaw going through. There's this was the wattle was meant to be in here for things should have been taken out, but it's not. You get conflicts now with the Auckland Regional Pest Management Plan going through. So what it is, it's very focused on what happens, and there are trees in here and plants which are now regarded as pests, because going through, what it means, you have to keep it under sustained control. You can't sell it. And one of them is the loquat. So people like quite loquats is because the berries are eaten by birds and dispersed, and it really does take off, and it can go through in native planted areas. You've got a conflict for those who want loquats and those who don't. So this part of the whole thing is when you're actually doing things is you make decisions on what you think should look right, not necessarily what people like. Garden centres are unable to sell them, and you cannot give them away to a neighbour or anything like that. Yeah, that's under regional pest management, which is just going. And this should be out in the open. Yeah, it's moving. Yeah, and it's actually just grown too big. This is one of the things you say that was planted 20 years ago. So that's what you get in 20 years.
Planning to put them for sale yesterday.
Have they?
Yeah,
you need a lot of sun.
Pine nut.
So we're told.
Pine nut, is it?
Yeah, pine nuts. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I would.
Yeah, for those who want to actually cultivate,
And you end up with, you know, like two
for hugel culture, as somebody going through, we tried this with logs. You rot your wood this way to be able to do it. This was just to try things out. They're particularly good for when you've got clay soils and other things. It's like because it retains the moisture and you've got a growing surface on the top. For this soil here, it's free draining as it is, so although water is retained by the rotting wood, it's not as effective as with the heavy clay soils. Yeah, so this was set up as to say, what can you do? You're just trying things out. So this is just another way of putting down rotting wood and how to use wood in the system. We've actually used wood on the sides for marking the paths. I've been through, we've had various ear mushrooms grow on them. In the last couple of years it's been pretty dry, most things, and most fungi are finding it on the surface. And this Brugsmania has got a big flower. There's like used to be Datura, big trumpet flowers, and in South America where they grow, these are pollinated by hummingbirds. Yeah.
That's what those were, weren't they? Babako?
Yeah, Babako down through there. Herb garden, which is we had for edibles, medicinal and sensory. Yeah, so just try to different things out. Use some of the bamboo from the food forest and now on the top for our so-called little shelter area here, so it's just a nice little place with the construction size bamboo.
Yep.
You really have a rest when you get time, eh?
Yeah. Most of the things. Again, tablecloth tree just growing, it's just spread along here. And through, that's one of our next challenges is to
How
get
big
rid
your
of
army of volunteers?
yeah, well, see, we've got about 40, 50 families involved.
Oh, okay. Right,
Yeah.
yeah.
Working bees, we get anything between 20 and 30 people along. What we do, we operate, we wanted, this could have been, space could be set up simply as an allotment system, as many things do. All community gardens operate differently, or seem to be. We've got the model of having a small, about 9 square metre individual plots. You can grow what you like, and communal areas where you come together to work, because we want to have work together, not just ignore each other all the time.
So this is a bit of a family plot.
Yeah, just one family.
Yeah,
Yeah, one of the things. Just grow some of the things, and
local.
yeah, some come. Because people shift around all the time, and people come and go. We've got probably about a 20 to 30% turnover each year. Just people changing. Yeah. Oh yeah, we pay for an employed person $50. Family, for family. Yeah, they pay for a plot here because we are set up as a society for those who want a plot. Yeah, and for those who don't have a plot, they can be friends of the garden. There's no cost. But when they come along to working bees, they can share in any produce.
So how much do you charge for a family?
$50 if employed, for a year, and $25 for unemployed students. We can keep it that because we sell some of the stuff, and it's marvellous what you can get out of it because this is rich, productive soil. Okay, so this one is a lot of covering is with seagrass at the moment. There's a mulch.
I think that was
Others will see will have peace to mulching. This And that's our source of water for watering can to go through. As you can see, we rely so much on rainwater. Yeah, you don't realise how much you rely on town supplied water until you don't have it. So often, as you see, you don't appreciate what you've got until you have it.
So in the drought, do people bring their own buckets?
Yes.
We bought some bought in, but we had to buy one tanker load. Flower.
Oh, okay.
See the flower there?
Yes, I can see that.
Red and yellow, that's a special, it's actually quite a highly priced.
Oh, okay. Ground cover. Native one, isn't it?
Green ground cover.
Native one.
What a surprise.
I think it's native, I think. It looks like a native corner, actually.
Area Cloa odorata.
A friend of mine
So
just
this is
bought
the
one
archaeological
last weekend.
site
Easter.
where the general area where the toki, the gardening implements, adzes were found in 2007. And it's an interesting story that comes with the Richard Main who found them, because when he found the main one, which is in the floor of the part, he actually said he had a vision of, looked around to see a Maori lady behind him with a moko and everything is almost nodding in agreement to go through. Now he couldn't understand why, or if things for him, European, as someone has said to me recently, well, maybe that was the right way of doing it, because if it was a Māori who found it, who would have believed them? Who would have believed them? Yeah, but it's the vision that it's hard to think, but the evidence, we know from Coomera pits, we know from the middens around, that there's been habitation around here, but these adzes were signs of cultivation and really for the things. And when you look around now, here, for this space here in the middle of the isthmus, there's very few places like this around that still exist and going on. Yeah, and you've got to again, why the special, to put this in context, where those adzes toki came from, who knows, because there's so many different things. There was the Oakley Creek Te Aonao, they could actually go and birth there. That wasn't too far over to get over to Avondale to be able to do the crossing there as well. This was part of the transport area between the coasts of the North Island. Yeah, so there's probably was a lot of things went on in this area at the time, and for this area there's 12 whānau groups, Ropu, who got interests in this area directly in Tamaki Makaurau, 12 of the 13, and that excludes the first people who got here, the Ngāti Awa down Tauranga, were Wairaka, who was the person who had she was here, and she was the one who said, who wanted to drink, who stamped her foot, and the Puna, the spring going up there now by the marae. She was here, the Wairaka stream. And she was the one who was for Whakatane, gave the name when the canoe was there at Whakatane. The men had gone off and the canoe was going away, and it was a woman, Wairaka, who said to paddle like a man to be able to get the canoe back, because it was not a woman's work in that day, but she said to do it. And that's why there were stories, strong stories of from the past, which say the equality between the sexes, different roles in that people had, but there were always exceptions to the rules. Okay, and how it goes. So this place was set up, we opened it just over a year ago, just as a place of memories where people can come and think for both from a historical thing, but as a place just to contemplate for those who have lost people and just think, because there are people just come and think. Yeah, and it's planted with the native, some of our native things, the holy grass, the, I forget the name now, for the low growing things, but it's all regrowing, the rocks from the area, the basalt. Yeah, well that's a story. If we just go back to the end of the wrong thing, you can get back to the shed, but here, as I said, there's a handout. This cultivated area is about 1,700 square metres. The food forest is just about 1,200 square metres. The eco structures around and the pathways and that make up about a third of the whole area. And so there's a lot packed into a mere 6,500 square metres. But at the moment, uncertain for what's going on for the future, because currently under the way land has to be designated under the unitary plan rules and all the rest, this land is undeveloped residential, this block. Yeah, and that was one of the problems when we couldn't do for the food forest and that for the area to protect the trees. It's now qualified as 20 years old. One of the things, but the main criterion is in fact how many people see it each day. Well, we would not qualify under that, but once the housing is up, we'd be able to qualify.
Oh,
Yeah.
is that ridiculous?
Yeah, that's right.
Catch-22.
Yeah, catch-22, and we don't own the land here. We are just tiaki. We're just looking after the land, going through, all volunteers going through. So what we're doing is just standing up and saying, this is the value of this place. This is the value. Please consider this as an asset for the future and continue to maintain it. Yeah. And from the financial point of view, the 2.2 hectare block has a nominal value of $14 million. So this space occupied by the sanctuary is probably about $4.5 million. You could never make a living or justify just agriculture on this space. That's the reality of what happens with urbanisation. Yeah. We know from our cameras, which that's why we brought you here, you're on our camera now, they're going through. There's a lot more use of this space than what it was just a couple of years ago. We've got photographic evidence. Yeah, okay, so if we just walk down there, and here's Adrian wanted some showers for today. Well, just a few drops of rain. Sorry, couldn't disappointed you.
All going well?
And it's so vast that the 36-mile hedge is separating them. They're large enough for one of that.
The Rainbow Garden. Just going for the green today, are we?
Oh, well, you know, there's colours here, yeah? So I have to ask you if it could be possible to have one seed with one thing.
Oh yes, there's some seed in the shed. There's some already picked. Well, what colour do you want?
That